Hey there guys, my name's EarthToLydia, and today I'm here to discuss the latest Dead by Daylight PTB, which serves as a preview of the upcoming chapter, All Kill. Let me nip this in the bud before I start. I'm not going to be talking about bugs in this video, so as much as the FPS drops suck, I'm just going to assume that it'll be fixed before it goes to live. Now, let's continue. This chapter introduces us to yet another character for each playable role. The new survivor is record label rep Yun-Jin Lee, and the new killer is the blade-wielding Trickster. Although I will be providing a lot of feedback on the PTB as a whole, there will be a heavy amount of focus on the Trickster in this video. As far as the design of the new chapter goes, the art and sound teams have completely blown it out of the park this time around. Everything from the characters down to the lobby has been expertly crafted in a way that we've never seen Dead by Daylight before. The urban neon of the lobby screen is aesthetically stunning, and as far as the soundtrack to this chapter goes, it is leaps and bounds above anything they've previously released. And it wasn't bad before. In fact, the music that you can hear in the background of this video is taken straight from the lobby, no external music even needed. If anything, it only makes me sad that we didn't receive a map with this chapter to fit the setting. However, I'm sincerely hoping that this can be revisited in the future, because if not, this feels like a greatly missed opportunity. The developers have brought K-pop, probably the most modern pop culture phenomenon right now, and incorporated it into the game in a way that feels extravagant, but not forced. Both characters' designs exude the flamboyance and style of the K-pop industry, while somehow still maintaining that slight menacing edge that makes them feel at home in the entity. And if you're not fully convinced by that statement, then the backstories? Yeah, let's get on to that. Ji-Woon Hak's backstory enlightens us to his life before the entity as both a K-pop icon and a serial murderer. Initially, after a childhood of performing with throwing knives for his family's business, he was added to a failing K-pop group by the name of No Spin. While recording their album, a fire broke out at the studio in which all of Ji-Woon's bandmates were trapped in the blaze of the collapsing studio. Ji-Woon became so enthralled with his bandmates screaming his name through the pain that rather than helping, he left them to die to the flames. In the wake of their deaths, his producer, Yun-Jin Lee, relaunched him as a solo artist named the Trickster. He became so obsessed with witnessing his name being screamed in pain again that he began picking up and torturing fans and citizens in the areas that he was touring, and would record and remix the screams into his music. This didn't go down well with the fans or the music executives, and his music's popularity saw a decline in sales, and he risked being dropped by his record label, Mightee Entertainment. He was due to perform at a private event for the record label's staff, but hijacked the event, instead turning it into a massacre which Yun-Jin was forced to watch. At this point, both Ji-Woon and Yun-Jin were consumed by the fog and transported to the entity. Visually, this character is very unlike anything that we've ever seen for a killer before. He's easily the most human looking and least mutated out of the whole killer roster, the only exception of course being Legion, but I feel like their masks do a good job of adding another layer to disconnect them from their humanity. The Trickster, however, he's purely human, but completely sadistic, and I feel like this adds a whole new layer to how sinister he really is. There are so many subtle details, like every now and then he'll give a small laugh in game, or the fourth wall break in the lobby where he looks back at the player and winks, and oh god, let's talk about that Mori. For his Mori animation, he very subtly flicks a blade up into the air at the start, followed by a tirade of knife-throwing acrobatics, and right at the end, as he throws a card onto the body, the blade from the start comes flying back down. It's Persona meets JoJo's Bizarre Adventures in all the right ways. And to the staff members who created this, I applaud you. His perks are also quite impressive, but I think in their current state, they have the ability to be oppressive when paired with others that do a similar job. Unfortunately, with the way that they work, I feel like it could be a little bit difficult to tweak them in a way that makes them feel fair in conjunction with other perks without being too weak on their own. Starstruck makes every survivor in your terror radius suffer from the exposed status effect when you pick up a survivor. Hex, crowd control, will block off a window after the first time a survivor vaults it, and No Way Out is a token perk where for every individual survivor that you hook, the entity will block the exit gate switches from being used for up to 10 seconds per token. Just think about that paired with Remember Me and Bloodwarden. Enough said. Now I'm going to be moving on to the segment where I talk about how the Trickster falls a bit short. For this, I'm going to be mostly talking about him from a perkless and add-onless point of view, and specifically target his power. Just for argument's sake, I will also be comparing a lot of the Trickster's kit to the other range killers that are already in the game, to see how his stats fare compared to theirs. Trickster's power comes in the form of the throwing blades from his lore. You'll start with 60 blades which can be refilled at lockers. There's a short wind up and wind down animation similar to the Huntress's hatchet wind up and Pyramid Head's switch to and from Rites of Judgment. This means that during that cooldown, you won't be able to M1 a survivor that could be juking right in front of you. Also, like Huntress, Trickster reloads his blades at lockers, and while this is a quite cool animation, by default it feels unnecessarily long, and you can really feel valuable time slipping through your fingers here. Accurate hits will power the ability Main Event, which allows you to throw an unlimited number of blades without the reduced movement speed for a short amount of time. To start things off, the base movement speed for the Trickster is 4.4 meters per second. This is also known as 110% movement speed. However, this drops to 92% when aiming and throwing blades, which makes him slower than the survivors. 110% movement speed is something that we've witnessed with other projectile-based killers such as Huntress and Deathslinger. And while I think the reduced movement speed is quite necessary for those killers, I don't really think it's that justified here. To remove a health state with Trickster's throwing blades, you need to successfully land 8 consecutive blades on a survivor. For both Huntress and Deathslinger, they only require 1 hit from their weapons to remove a full health state, making it reasonable for them to move slower. Even Plague has the ability to wipe out a health state for several survivors in one swipe of her purge, and she's still a 115% movement speed killer. The stacks that you accumulate also suffer from regression, so if you can't guarantee those 8 hits quickly, then you will lose their progress. This can be a particularly troublesome problem on maps with a lot of line of sight breaks such as Leary's, as well as if you're playing against a group of survivors either using head-on or body blocking for a teammate. Therefore, statistically, out of all of the ranged killers in the game currently, that makes his projectiles the weakest by a significant margin. This isn't even factoring into consideration that after throwing a blade, there is a slight camera jolt. Therefore, throwing multiple blades will create a spread rather than an accurate hit and makes it incredibly difficult to land long-range shots. The blades themselves have an incredibly small and precise hitbox, therefore the spread doesn't necessarily help you as much as it just wastes blades. Also, if you manage to stack a few blades onto a survivor but then catch up enough to M1, then you can kiss goodbye to all of the stacks that you achieved before that. The stacks will completely reset after a basic attack, as well as giving the survivor a speed boost, which can make everything you did before the M1 completely redundant. The blades have minimal arcing, which means trying to aim over the tops of hills or structures isn't a great strategy in the same way that it is for Huntress and Plague. Blades also remove play with your food stacks, but do not count for say the best for last stacks as they're not a basic attack, so don't even bother trying to compensate for his base kit with perks like these. Overall, he just doesn't have a lot of map pressure and he really struggles to shut down chases quickly for various reasons. I would personally really like to see the regression removed. I don't think it's necessary on a 110 killer, and especially not when all of that hard work gets removed with an M1. Also, in case you couldn't already tell, I really don't think he should be 110. If his blades did more damage and were more of a threat to the survivors, then yes, I would see how this is necessary, but as it stands right now, in particular with the spread, I don't think so. Having said that, I find him really fun. I find his core mechanic engaging and entertaining, and I don't really want any major changes to that. If we saw him tweak slightly, whether that's in the ways that I've outlined or otherwise, he could easily gain some decent map pressure and make him a viable contender at high ranks. So far, this chapter seems to have had pretty mixed reactions from the community, but I can hand on heart say that I'm thoroughly impressed with the overall package and the obvious care that this chapter's been handled with. No, it's not a perfect product, but it's pretty damn good, and without the PTBs we wouldn't be able to improve them before they're implemented into the live build. As I mentioned earlier, the sound and art departments have absolutely blown me away with this chapter, and as always, they've added something into the game that could have really gone wrong, but they've really handled it tastefully and in a way that doesn't detract from the main game. So for that reason, I'm so obsessed with this chapter. And I'm not even a K-pop fan. If you have any thoughts or have tried out the PTB, be sure to let me know in the comments section. I'm super keen to hear what feedback you guys have to give, or potentially any other ways that you would like to see the chapter change before it comes to live. As always, my socials are in the description, and I want to thank everybody for making it this far into the video. See you later, guys.